Welcome to At Work in America, sponsored by Paychex. At Work in America digs in behind the headlines and trends to the stories of real people making a difference in the world of work. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Bowes and Trish Steed.
Welcome to the At Work in America podcast. My name's Steve Bowes. I'm joined by Trish Steed. Trish, what is happening?
You know what is almost fall? Have you been watching the news? Like I'm sitting here in the middle of the country
fall.
enjoying summer. No, they are going all in, and these things happen very quickly on TikTok actually. The new trend right now is if you go to Michael's, Hobby Lobby, any of those type of stores, all the Halloween decor is out early. And people are actually hosting summertime, summerween bashes. So, what do you think about that? Would you hold a Halloween party in summer?
Well, I was about to say I don't care about the decor, but the Halloween candy I am interested in. And if
Okay, it's out.
so, I'll have to get myself to a store here in the next couple of days and stock up because I'm the kind of a person who will start buying Halloween candy for myself like
Oh
right
gosh.
now. So I'm going
What's
to
your
be
candy
all
of
over that.
choice?
Well, I like lots
Like,
of different. Yeah, I like Kit Kats a lot. I
oh,
like some. I shouldn't say this because I have a son with a peanut allergy, but I do like a little Reese's peanut butter cup action,
okay.
Butterfinger. I guess I lean a little bit more into the chocolate kind of
Yeah.
treats at Halloween time. Junior mints. You know.
Mm.
Yeah. What is your go-to candy?
You know what? I don't have one right this second, but normally I have a bowl of Jelly Bellies that stays
Mm.
out like all the time. Just because then if you just need a quick little one or two like sweet, it's not too I don't know, too bad for you, I guess, right? If you just do it a little bit. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about though, is I'm not even ready to have pumpkin spice anything. It's too hot out, you
I
know?
think you're ready to maybe go to Disney World because I think I see your mouse ears on the wall
Oh,
behind you. But
I'm like, which way? Yes, you know what? I found those, and these are ours from Shanghai, Shanghai
oh,
Disneyland.
wow,
When we
fantastic.
had when we went with our friend Stacy,
Shout out Shanghai Disney.
right? See, I've got my I love Shanghai. You know what I love to do because everyone knows I'm a Disney freak. So I like going to Epcot, and people always, if you go to Disney very much, you always look and see like what ears are people wearing, and like if they're cute, it's like, oh, where do I get them? No one can get these. So
Hard to
everyone's
find.
like, ooh, look at those ears. Yeah. Can I show you real quick since you mentioned it? I have my new ones from this year because I went in June. I'll show you these. It's from their newest movie, Wish.
Wow. I really hope then, folks, those are fantastic. We're going to have to try to encourage a lot of people to listen to this episode on our YouTube channel to see
To
Trish
see the ears.
modeling the mouse ears.
He's so cute. Look at him. He's like a little wishing star.
And they actually should check out our YouTube channel as well, because
Should.
that's growing a lot. We were just talking about it offline, and we're working hard to do more there. So that's YouTube. It's HR Happy Hour Live on YouTube. You
Yes.
can search for that. Trish, today's podcast is different and interesting and exciting. We're going to be talking about mental well-being, mental health, with our friends from Sholder. That's Sholder, no you, right? And it's an interesting new approach, a new potential employer-based benefit that can be offered to employees all around mental health, but
Hmm.
a different set of
So
ideas, a
different.
different approach. And Trish and I both had a chance to experience the actual shoulder session before we recorded today's show, and it's hard to explain everything about it. Just listen to the show, meet the guys from Shoulder, and we'd encourage you to check that out.
Yeah. Think about it. It's like a shoulder to lean on, right?
Yeah,
A little shoulder to lean on when
absolutely.
you need one.
And
So
and,
it's
and
really unique.
so definitely stay tuned for that. We want to thank our friends at Paychex, of course. This episode about Work in America is sponsored by Paychex, one of the leading providers of HR, payroll, retirement, and insurance solutions for businesses of all sizes. Trish, do you ever feel like when you were an HR leader, you were drowning in paperwork or just
All the
repetitive?
time. I feel like I'm drowning in paperwork now. Are you kidding?
That's true.
Yes, when I was in big positions. Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
of course, right? But you can get out of that. You can transform your HR game today, just
I'm ready.
with the magic of AI. Trish, Beaumont Vance, who's Paychex Senior Vice President of Data Analytics and AI, will be doing an exclusive on-demand webinar to
Ooh,
discover how leaders are using AI to streamline HR tasks and supercharge their efficiency. You can learn how to automate tedious tasks and free up your time for what really matters,
love
taking
it.
care of your people. So go to paychex.com/AWIA. That's paychex.com/AWIA to get access to the on-demand webinar now and learn how to transform your HR processes and check that out. I haven't watched that yet, Trish. I'm going to watch that this week.
I'm
So
absolutely going to. That's
thank
awesome.
you to our friends at Paychex. All right, Trish, we're going to launch the show. This show starts a little bit differently, a little bit of a kind of a relaxing, get in the
That's
moment
right.
kind of exercise. So
Get
stay tuned for
comfortable.
that. And a warning, if you're listening to this podcast while driving your car or running on the treadmill, maybe don't
Pull
do the
over.
don't do the exercise. Pull over first. So but you're gonna love the show with our friends from Sholder. And yeah, thanks for listening. Trish, before we formally welcome our friends from Shoulder and introduce them properly, we're going to start with a brief exercise, which listeners will understand shortly why it's important to do, but how it aligns with the mission of Shoulder and what Shoulder can bring to people and bring to organizations. So to do that, to lead us in that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Austin, and take us through this exercise.
Well, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. And before we dive in today, we're going to take a second to be present. And the way we're going to do that, let's close our eyes and let's take a breath in through our nose and then out through the mouth when you're ready at your own pace. And as you breathe in through your nose, I want you to say the word thank in your mind. And as you breathe out, say the word you. Let's do a few more breaths. I say the best present is being present sometimes, and saying thank you for the chance to have a breath and have a chance to be present together is how I want us to begin today. So one more breath. All right, here we go.
Nice, thank you. I should have made a little disclaimer if you were driving your car or running on the treadmill while listening to the show today, maybe don't participate in the exercise, but that was great. So let me introduce Trish, our guest, formally and welcome them. We're very excited for today's show. I know you and I had a lot to talk about as well because we had a chance to actually work with Shoulders recently as well. So first up, let's welcome Rett Kearbey. Rett is the CEO and co-founder of Sholder. Rett leads Shoulder's team in creating and defining a new tier of transformative support for modern mental health needs. Before Sholder, Rett held strategic growth and executive roles for Apple, real estate marketplaces, and global streaming media. He's a classically trained singer. That's pretty cool. And Rett loves spending time in nature. Rett, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much, Steve. Trish, good to be here. I appreciate you guys having us. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, you do now that reading the bio and listening to that. Yeah, the voice. I get it.
Well,
You've got the right voice for singing. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks.
no singing today unless you really feel compelled to, Rhett, but that's fine. Austin, who led our exercise just a second ago, let's welcome him formally. He is Austin Baker. He's the president of HRO Partners, and he spearheads leadership development and pioneers benefit strategies. In his role at National Enrollment Partners, he unites independent firms nationwide, helping to shape the future of employee benefits, which we love, Trish, employee benefits. In his consultation with Sholder, Austin is proud to support their growth in the mental well-being space. Austin, welcome, and thank you for leading us in our opening exercise this morning.
Thank you so much, Steve. We appreciate being on the show. We're very excited to have this conversation with y'all today.
Yeah, we are too, and we got a lot to talk about. But first, like we often do with our guests, especially founders, startups, is really get a little bit of the backstory, Rhett, because you've got an interesting background besides the singing. What took you to say, boy, something like Shoulder is needed, and I want to be the person who helps me bring it to life? I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. I was pre-medicine in college when I first went to school, and I switched to business pretty quickly when I learned more about the state of our healthcare systems. And I talked to real doctors, and they kind of gave me some warning flags and said, be careful, like make sure you know what you're getting into. This is different than, what our parents knew as becoming a doctor, actually is these days. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized I actually want to help people heal. I want to be a part of, people coming into more full versions of themselves over time, as opposed to managing sickness, and creating forever patients. And so that's always been a deep desire of mine. I ended up going into business. I started a couple of companies, and had some success. My most recent role was the head of sales for a conscious media company that's a streaming service, a lot like Netflix or Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left that company, I took a big break, and I was just kind of looking at the state of the world. I was turning 40. And there's a lot of big stuff that happens around that age for many of us. We kind of ask ourselves the big questions and say, am I really on the right track for the next decade or two? And I wanted my next move to be intentional. And so I really started asking and believing, or people use different language, praying, manifesting, making myself available and saying, show me what to do and I'll do it. I need clear direction. And I started watching a lot of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, to be honest, and old interviews with Fred Rogers, and watching the way he was with these generations that he helped raise, these generations of latchkey kids whose parents were now double parents in the workforce, or single parents raising kids, and they're at work when the kids get home from school. And his show was on, and the way that he used language, and looking at some other great leaders of our culture, Martin Luther King Jr. and Thich Nhat Hanh, and people that have led peaceful resistance in their country for humanitarian, to advance humanitarian purposes. I was really inspired. I was looking at polarization in our culture, and I thought, what we need right now is a depth of human connection that we haven't experienced in quite a while, since technology has become so pervasive in our lives. And now there are a lot of scientists that are talking about just how our brains have been rewired by these tools that we all carry around that are so powerful. But it's kind of like fire in the hands of a toddler with our culture. And so I called one of my friends who has a Harvard MD and got a PhD from Oxford, and he likes to say he climbed the ladder of Western mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got to the top, he couldn't heal himself. And so he's a doctor of psychiatry with a degree from Harvard, advanced degrees, very smart guy. And it wasn't until he actually found more, earth-based wisdom traditions and his own spirituality that it really balanced out, and he started to heal in other ways. And so he has very interesting perspective on this. And through a conversation with him, we discussed whether or not a compassionate person who has a desire to help could become trained in just a matter of a few weeks to deliver extraordinary care and outcomes-based support, mental and emotional support, at a fraction of the cost of traditional therapy, expensive coaches. And this idea was what we started pulling the thread on, and that's ultimately what became Sholder. So that's a little bit of the origin story. We incorporated the business back in 2021 to file for some early intellectual property and trademarks and things like that. And we've been laying the foundations ever since.
Thank you for sharing that story, Rhett. I know that, you mentioned the mental health crisis, which obviously this is something that people of all ages and ethnicities and backgrounds and religious beliefs, like we all experience different levels of feeling either more mentally stable or just having moments where we're maybe trying to cover up when we're dealing with something. So for me, when I heard about what you all are doing at Sholder, it was a little bit of curiosity and fascination, because I like the part about sort of having approached with Western medicine and you can't get quite there. Someone had told me not too long ago that our bodies are actually uniquely able to heal themselves in many ways, right? So if I get a paper cut, I don't have to do too much to it. It's going to heal, right? So our body wants to heal, but I don't I guess what I'm tapping into is our brain. We don't use our brain enough to heal ourselves. So I'd love to hear just your thoughts kind of on the state of mental health and how Shoulders kind of tapping into that piece of it.
Yeah, well, you use a great analogy of the paper cut in a finger, and I believe that our emotional body is the same as our physical body. It knows what to do over time. If you watch a 2 or 3 year old not get their way, they clear negative emotion from their body very quickly and very easily, right in the middle of the aisle of the grocery store. And what we do as our culture, we've learned how to be polished and polite and to swallow it and to stuff it somewhere. But you've heard the phrase, the body keeps the score. And the intelligence of our body is so much greater than just our intellect. We have so much more intelligence happening. There's over 40,000 neurons, brain cells in our heart, and many more in our gut. And so this access point that we have to deeper wisdom and intelligence goes way beyond our analytical mind. And when you talk about a paper cut and the body knowing how to heal itself, if you don't pack mud into that paper cut and keep banging on it and disrupting it, it'll heal. But if you do continue to disturb it, it's not going to heal. And the same is true with our emotional body. So when you go through difficult situations, when you're going through trauma, we live in a culture that is rife with fear, bombardment, constant chaos, and a lot of mind activity. And so continuing to disturb the emotional body and not letting it rest and not finding that deeper connection is akin to packing your wound with some mud and continuing to bang on it. And so this is a reason that people can get caught in cycles, that patterns can develop. And so what we like to do at Sholder is reconnect people with their bodies and help them gain access to that inner wisdom that is always available and ready to move on their behalf to help heal, help restore, and help move them forward.
And that's kind of just to play off of that a little bit. The reason I joined Sholder to make investment into it and to come and help lead growth with the organization, working with Rett and Mark, incredible co-founders, was because I had 26 plus years of employee benefits, consulting, and work. The EAPs continue to stagnate over time. You saw some spike. You saw some spike during COVID, no doubt. But the state of mental well-being in our country, we hit on a little bit, but at the same time, most of the utilization for those programs has remained under 3 or 4%. But the studies show that it should likely be more like 20% or higher. And so here now you have number one cause of disability in the US is mental well-being, mental health. Number one cause of leave requests grew 35% last year, mental health. So why aren't people taking advantage of that? What are the barriers? And so I think that's where Sholder comes in. It's short for space holder. And that's why I spell without the U, the only thing missing is you. And so the way that they've experienced this with their customers and what I've seen, it's really remarkable. It's 6 to 7 times utilization over traditional mental well-being benefits, at 100% net promoter scores, at 98% rebooking rates. I was like, wow, this is different. And it's different in all the ways that we needed it to be. And that's what's so compelling about Sholder. And that's what has me so excited in my consultation and growth with them. It's an incredible organization product. And I'm so happy about the response of the customers.
Yeah. Austin, I want to ask you a quick follow-up on, you mentioned barriers. I literally had just written it in my notes, like ask about barriers. So what are some of the barriers? Because even, I've been through a shoulder exercise this week. Steve has as well. I want to tell you, I'm going to let you tell me what the barriers are, but I've written down a few, like there are a few that I think people might have some reluctance. What are you hearing from the people who are either thinking about using Sholder or maybe now using it and saying, this is what was really scary to me?
Well, so I'll start and Rett can chime in as well. So some of the highest ones are, the leap to use a employer paid benefit and having the trust of confidentiality on that and using those programs that are being paid to know where it goes. The one thing about Sholder is it's not there. You're not going to see a therapist. You're not a patient. You're a sharer. And you're going to see a Sholder, not to be diagnosed, but to be heard in a radically different way, and to be met exactly where you are without reservation. And that's what making it sticky. But what makes people start to do it is the fact that it's non-clinical. There's no medical record. There's no notes. There's no record of you having any of that call. You had the call, you had the experience. We met you where you were, and you met yourself at the end of it in a new place. And so that is what the power of the type of, of service it is. And that's what's helped to remove that barrier. But so the non-clinical aspect, I don't want any, I'm in the insurance business, have been a long time. I don't want anything on my medical record about mental health.
Mm.
I mean, I know how the sausage is made on that, right? Most HR professionals, they actually use the mental well-being rates at an even lower rate than the employees.
Oh, I think there's a pretty untapped need in the HR industry itself, right, for this type of a service and these type of interventions. There was just an article that made the rounds everywhere. Trish, I'm sure you saw it last week because it was in the New York Times, and that just gets a lot of play, which was
Right.
HR is all being in HR is a miserable experience, essentially, was the article. And
It can be.
I think it got read by 10 million people last week. So I do think, yeah, because one of the things I think I thought about, as Trish said, we each participated separately, right, in our own Sholder sessions to get a
Right.
good, because we wanted a really good understanding of what the experience was like before we sat down with Rett in Austin today. And then
Yeah, I'm so glad you did that. What was your experience?
yeah,
I'm
well,
curious.
I'll start.
You
And then
start.
maybe I'd love to have Trish chime in as well. So one of the things I appreciated, and Austin tapped into some of this a moment ago, was that it's not like going to classic or traditional therapy with a psychologist or a psychiatrist or almost a medical kind of context, right? Because I've done therapy, I'm doing it, right? Like I know what it's, so I can speak
Great.
to my own personal experience. The Shoulder experience was different. I think they're both valuable experiences and in their own ways.
Yes.
And I wouldn't necessarily say one is better, quote unquote, or they each have a place, I think. And that was my experience as well. So there's a couple of things I specifically appreciated about my experience with Shoulder. One of which was, yeah, Austin, I really felt like I was being listened to and
Mhm.
met where I was, and the conversation that I had went in a certain direction, and it probably was different than I had expected it to or thought it might have at the beginning of the hour, and it ended up in a different place, and it meandered to that place in a different way. But I really felt, I felt the whole time that I was directing it, and I was being supported along the way to do. And the last thing I wrote down, I have a bunch of notes I wrote down from the session, and maybe I shouldn't have been writing so much during the session. But I wanted
I wrote too.
I wanted to have notes for
Great.
today. I really felt like I was being helped to discover my own answers. Like the answer, Red, I think you sort of hinted at this. It was already sort of inside of me. And I'm not saying all my problems were solved in one session I had the other day, but I felt like it drew out a couple of things that I knew all along that were living within me, and I was having a difficult time really tapping into. Even in my traditional therapy that I've been doing, I still felt like there was something that happened in the Shoulder session that helped me discover something, a couple of things that were in there, and my Shoulder, the person I was working with, helped me to get there. So Rhett, you're nodding a little bit. Maybe you could give me a comment or two. Is that something you hear from people who go through the Shoulder experience, and is that some of the feedback you get?
It is. It's right in alignment. I appreciate you sharing it. One of the things we believe, because we experience it, and you can share whether this has been your experience in your own life. It's easy to think of ourselves as who we are in this moment, but if you look back over time, you've changed quite a bit. And so the truth is, we're always changing, and there's something that's always looking to emerge for our next awareness, the next step in our lives, that next thing. And we talked a little bit earlier about getting caught in patterns. And so sometimes we can become kind of our own enemy and our own limiting factor with the patterns we hold in our minds and the stories we tell about who we are and what we're doing, and et cetera, as opposed to experiencing what is emerging kind of from a different place. There's one of the things we believe is that there's this blueprint of Steve that is unique to Steve, that no one is ever going to be able to copy or reclaim. And if Steve doesn't act like Steve all the way through, then some of Steve is going to be lost forever. Some of what would have been Steve is going to be lost forever. And so what we're ultimately looking to do is reflect back and meet Steve exactly where he is, or meet Rett, or meet Austin, meet Trish, and support. It's kind of like the Olympic curler teams that, where that polisher goes in front of the puck that's moving and helps kind of make easy the way of emergence. What is coming up for you now? What does your own inner intelligence have to say about this? Because we really do believe that any of the big answers for your own life are going to come from that place inside yourself, that sacred connection to whatever it is that's giving you life. And this might get a little bit mystical for some people. It doesn't have to be. Some people just call it their core self, just who I really am, just the real me, right? And so it can be very grounded, but ultimately that's what we're interested in, is who are you really and who are you becoming in this moment?
Yeah. Thank you, Rett. That echoes a lot of how I felt after I went through my session the other day. Trish, I would love for you to just comment a little bit, because we did these sessions specifically so that we could come and talk about them here today and kind of share, because this can be a little bit, I think, maybe abstract. And after you're done, Trish, I do want to sort of use the guys to tie it back to, hey, business people, this is what you should do or could do. But Trish, I'd love for you to maybe share some of your as much as you're comfortable with about your experience.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit. So very similar to you. One of the things I liked, and these are a couple things that tied it back to what Austin was saying. So the first thing the person told me was, I'm going to take some notes and I'm going to give you a summary kind of later, and then they're going to be destroyed. So that aspect of confidentiality was there as she was building my trust. And I went into it in a really different place. So I have a therapist who I love and adore. She helps me immensely. And I was, in my mind, still struggling with what's the difference, which I want you two gentlemen to get to in just a moment. But I also went through, without giving away too much, I went through a breakup. I broke up with a person I had a 4-year relationship with just a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do a shoulder session because I thought, what in the world am I going to tell a stranger? And Steve, kind of to your point, what you thought you might talk about, it changed, right, as the conversation went. And so I was shocked at how well my shoulder, Felicia, was at drawing me out, but at my own pace. And I got to talk, and I told her at the start, I don't know what I want to achieve or accomplish. And pretty quickly we figured out what I was going through. And again, it was tapping into what I already knew, but maybe I had never directly thought about or said out loud. And I will just say this, I came to at least one big aha for myself that I did not achieve through therapy or any other means of medicine. And I don't know what I'm going to do with the knowledge that I came to, but I will say it's been on my mind. And I think for me, that's the point of it, of why it's valuable. It actually got me to figure out something about myself that I might not have addressed that directly. So Austin, maybe you can chime in on a few of those aspects of, is that similar to what you're also hearing and experiencing from the people that use Shoulder?
Well, I went through the shoulder session much like y'all did, as I was coming into the company to work with them. And I also went through the foundations training, which is the beginning phases to become a shoulder. Okay, it's 2.5 days on video Zoom sessions. And so that's a commitment, right? I was like, okay, I'm committing, right? There's a lot of things you could do for 2.5 days. And my girlfriend went through it as well. And she wanted to learn, and she's a very senior executive. It's some of the most powerful training I've ever been through. I've never learned to listen like this before. And I've never learned to hear like I was, to be able to help someone hear themselves like this before. So one of the principles that both of you saw is that with Rett, the way they beautifully designed this, him and Mark and the team, we believe and we teach in the foundation shop that you're not going to give advice. You're going to help them find their own wisdom. You're going to help ask powerful questions to help them discover that. but you're also going to help them find the wisdom from not just in their heads, but in their bodies. We talked about the neurons in the heart. Your heart, has its own brain system, and you store memories there. We know the heart memories differently. They feel different, right?
Yeah.
Your gut is called the second brain. Rett, so aptly, talks about that systematically. There's cultures that are calling it like it's kind of like the second brain because of the powerful things that you keep there. You've had an upset stomach when something's bothering you, right? So the body does keep score. So if you're not addressing both mind and body, and that sounds a little woo-woo, like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, right, to some degree, but no, actually, it's perfectly normal. And so if you're not listening to that as part of it, and you're not listening to yourself, then you're not going to heal. And so people actually that are going through intensive therapy, Trish, perhaps working on some hard things, will have shoulder sessions in between sometimes because being shoulders is like a massage for your mind. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
That's kind of, so think of it as that, and think of the experience of being shouldered as something that's not designed to be better or different than therapy. It's designed to be different for very specific reasons. And that's why the power of being shouldered works so well. That's why it's so sticky in terms of the people that use it. They're like, wow, this is different in such a positive way. So it's designed that way. There's a very specific arc to it.
Yeah.
About how the session's designed based on the habits of the very best therapists and coaches out in the world. So
Yeah. Rhett, I do have a question about kind of the say the person who you would be assigned to talk to. I'd love for you to share kind of how that process works, but also maybe address a little bit the fact that so many people in this world are lonely. They don't maybe have a best friend to go or a relative they can feel comfortable being their whole open self with. For me, I do have a best friend, but I did feel like I could see this being similar in terms of just someone who will really listen to you. So can you address maybe how this impacts loneliness, whether you're an entry level worker or you're an executive who doesn't have someone to talk to? How does that fit into what you do?
It's huge because we're hardwired for connection as human beings. Someone that has connected with many people over many years distilled her wisdom one time. I heard Oprah Winfrey say that it didn't matter whether she was talking to a prisoner or a president or Beyonce or whoever. At the end of their interaction, they would come to her and say, "Was that okay?" And
Wow.
she noticed that the thread that she wove through every conversation she had. She said people really just want to know three things. They want to know, do you see me? Do you hear me? And does what I say mean anything to you? And these are fundamental, very early human desires and I believe human needs that many of us don't have fully met in our youth. And then we grow into adults, which are just grown-up kids, and we're in the workforce and we're interacting with people and we have relationships and we have families. And the depth of connection we're experiencing of people being able to fully witness us, see us, hear us, if we're not careful, we can get detached from ourselves to some degree, and that separation plays out across our relationships. And so many times what we see is that people are a little hesitant to put heavy burdens on their loved ones with some of their deeper thoughts, some of the things they're going through. They need someone that is outside of their friend and family group, outside of their social sphere, that they can go talk to and really process anything. Because if you've ever been in a relationship, you know that there's certain things that if you bring them up, you can't take them back. You can't unsay certain things. And so if you need to process something, you need to go stay that into a pillow, into a safe place, but you need another person to play that very vital role. This is one of the reasons therapy is so important. Therapy is fantastic. I'm a big fan. I've been to therapy off and on for many years. Part of the challenge with it for employers is that it gets expensive and there's this automatic escalation. If you need a person, it's called a therapist. If you need to talk to someone, you're instantly escalated to a clinical therapist. There's no people option that is non-clinical and radically affordable. That isn't happening. That's what we're filling. That's the gap that we're filling, because you're either listening to your Calm app, or you're watching YouTube videos, or you're doing some kind of like self-help something, or you're talking to a person and all of a sudden you're at a clinical level, right?
Yeah.
And so this is this big gap here that we believe is fundamentally human, that is absolutely critical, and it's completely missing from the modern benefits stack. So that's one of the things we're trying to fix.
Yeah, Rhett, you made a great point there. I had sort of jotted that down as you were talking, like those app-based interventions, right? Because there's a huge chasm between people. If someone is cognizant enough and aware enough about their own selves that they, yeah, I could use a little support here. Or I'm struggling in this area or that area, or I'd like to figure out something. And it's hard to, most people anyway, I think, don't jump right to clinical therapy, right? They try to figure out some other way, and so it might be one of these self-help interventions, app-based interventions, et cetera. But then, as you said, if that's not right for them or not enough for them in those moments, that leap up to traditional therapy, it's a big leap for a lot of people. Honestly, I'll tell you quite frankly, I pushed against that for a long time in my own life, because that leap seemed to me a leap I was not personally ready to take, because maybe as
Mhm.
societally we've built that up to be, oh, you're in therapy, that's a really big
Mm-hmm.
deal, or and it shouldn't be, but that's another story I think for another day. But yeah, I
Yeah.
love how you positioned the concept here as being, hey, it's something else. It's not that big leap to expensive therapy, often hard to access therapy, and often maybe, at least in my example, and I think some others as well, I don't know that I want to be a person who's in therapy, if that makes sense, right? Like,
Mm. Well, it's admitting that something's wrong with me,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
And what one of the big differences that when we greet people, we see them as naturally creative, naturally resourceful, naturally whole. There's nothing missing. Everything's working exactly like it's supposed to. You're having a human response to difficult situations in your life. It's normalization. We live in a culture that is very busy, very mind identified. We have certain priorities culturally that we hold way up here that maybe aren't always in balance with the way that our physical bodies need to go through the day. And so, we have to do a lot of things to keep up sometimes. And, it gets hard. The pace is fast. And many people that are having very natural responses to that don't want to admit that there's something wrong with them. And we agree. And so when people are facing clinical level issues, those resources are critical. And
mhm,
we need to make sure people have access to them. The vast majority of us are going through human experiences,
yeah,
and we need a human being that has a level of skill that's not connected to our normal social
yeah.
circles, to help us kind of get back to the truth of who we know ourselves to be at a deeper level, and reestablish mental stability, emotional resilience, and to understand how to step into that next version of ourselves.
Yeah. I think that much like Steve, I thought therapy was something that I don't was either embarrassing or I was admitting I'm a failure. Again, maybe like I'm 53, maybe that's a little bit of a generational thing. Like it's less acceptable to go do that. And I didn't go until I had physical symptoms of migraines that had gotten so profound. So my body was screaming out like, help me do something. And I just wonder, had I known about this step in between, if that would have helped even alleviate some of those things from just getting out of control physically, right? If you're mentally not addressing things, your body's going to tell you, right? It's whether you're ready to hear it or not, I
Yeah,
think.
well, I think great. And Austin, I want to ask you in a second about just the way employers can engage with Shoulder and make this available to their teams, because you, as a benefits consultant for a long time, I think you've got some expertise in that space. But to me, just Trish, it's that leap. Like it's a huge leap to say, for an employee who might be struggling, a person who might be struggling, to say, oh, go find a therapist. That's hard to do. It's complicated. It's expensive, and there's a lot of barriers in between. It's just going through the experience, which Mark from Shoulder helped, quite frankly, I'm going to admit, Mark helped me organize my shoulder session, but it's so easy to
Yes.
organize this and get started, right? It's such a different experience than going to find a quote unquote real therapist, right? So,
It's built to feel organic. What we
yeah,
want it to feel like
Mhm.
is once you're connected with your shoulder, you can save them in your phone. They will reach out proactively and just check in occasionally. There's not the power dynamic or I don't know if you've ever had a therapist where you've asked them a question, have you ever gone through something like this yourself? And they kind of go, well, this is not about me, this is about you.
yeah,
It's a very one way kind of thing. And so there's a little bit more flexibility in this organic connection because it's two human beings together. There's not a clinical dynamic. And
yeah.
so there's not any of those clinical protocols that have to be followed. And the relationship can feel a lot more flexible over time. So I appreciate you calling that out, Steve. It's
Yeah.
an important part of what people experience with us.
Yeah, Austin, for folks who are listening to this, we got a lot of HR people, a lot of benefits people, a lot of business owner types listening to this. I would love for you to maybe share a little bit about just this is a new concept to many folks who'll be listening to this, right? This idea, but I'd love for you to just maybe couch it in the classic employer sponsored benefits kind of thing that you could be doing for your teams and maybe give us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Steve. There are people that engage directly with Shoulder, and they can if they'd like to do that. They can go and they can book directly with that. But we've structured an employee benefit option on that, where and what we found is for employers that are wanting to diversify their stack of mental well-being offerings, we don't say mental health, we say mental well-being and fitness. That's what we're about. Okay. And so mental well-being and fitness, if you believe that perhaps you're not reaching everyone that you should, and you're an organization that you believe that you see other statistics, or there's studies show that a lot of employees are looking for more options, right? There's also a very large shortage of therapists in the country, 500,000 right now is the shortage. Okay, and so getting in sometimes there is an access issue as well. And so these networks are there, but we're actually really going to the same network, but really truly. But what the way it's structured is it's a very affordable monthly fee, and the monthly fee gets you access to the program, gets you cultural support to build a culture of mental well-being and fitness, training for your leadership and active listening and the skills of shouldering. So maybe they start a meeting a little different now. Maybe they find a way to listen to an employee better. Maybe they find a way to listen to themselves better, become a better, more present leader. And so if you want to build a culture of mental well-being and fitness, then we want to talk to you about how we help you do that. Because this is a benefit that builds culture. And then it's just charged as it's used. I think that fundamentally the values of this organization that Rett as the CEO has built, and Mark as well, we didn't want to make money when people didn't use the benefit. That doesn't feel right. That it's structured in such a way that assumes some kind of utilization. You only make money when you're less used. And
This is not the Planet Fitness model, right? Where you sell 5,000 memberships and hope only 100 people show up at a time, right?
Oh gosh.
So if you think you're getting the best utilization out of your benefits, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you think that you need to mix it up and try something different, just try it and try Sholder. And so if you go to sholder.com, SHOLDER, is that basically the way that it works is we're going to make an offer for anyone as a thank you for having us on the show. Anyone that books a session for themselves in August or September, or books something for a demo as an employer to look at it, we're going to give to Shoulder Up Foundation an offer. We're going to give sessions to them. So by being Shoulder, you're giving Shoulder, and that benefits individuals that are in foster families. Foster families it benefits women who are in difficult situations as well, so they don't have to pay for Shoulder. So as a thank you to you, if someone wants to try being shouldered and try that, if they just mention your show, then we are going to basically give on behalf of your show to that foundation.
Love it. Thank you, Austin, for that. And I appreciate the offer as well. And we'll make sure we write that up, put that in the show notes as well, and we promote the show. Look, Trish, you've said this a lot, right? As we've worked with organizations over the years, and all we ever we're not, I'm telling you, my highest recommendation, and I'm not just saying that because the guys are staring at me right now. I encourage everyone listening to this. If you think like, boy, I would love someone to talk to about this. I would love to be listened to. I'd love to be heard. I'm not, just try it. Just try one time. Because I think at least in your experience and my experience, it's like, oh, I all of a sudden now I understand something I didn't quite understand before in just 45 minutes. It was actually quite
Yeah.
remarkable. And I think you're sort of felt the same way about your experience.
Yeah, if someone would have told me I would have made that sort of revelation in that, or that I would have felt comfortable to open up that quickly to someone. And I'm a pretty open person, but yeah, I had hesitation and reservation, and wow, I wish I'd done it sooner. Like it was so helpful. And like I said, it's not even just, I got the summary kind of our conversation before the notes are destroyed, and just rereading it, I thought, wow, I wish I had thought to try and put pen to paper, but the fact is you don't. So you need that, Rhett, to your earlier comment, you need that loop, right? You need that feedback. I use Column. I can use my Column app all day long. It doesn't give me feedback on what I'm thinking or feeling or wanting to talk about, right? So this is such a unique thing. It's not an app. Everybody turns to apps nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So turn to a
Yeah.
person, right? It was so
What we
comforting.
say is that, your life is worth your attention. And I don't know how, if you can relate to this, but when I'm in my own head and I'm telling myself the stories and I'm kind of going through things, if
Mhm.
I have to articulate it to someone else, all of a sudden I think about it a little bit differently, and I have to use words and I have to communicate it, and it changes the nature of it by the fact that I'm watching my words, and someone else is witnessing it as well. And
Mhm.
so there's, in physics, this is known, there was these double slit experiments that showed that even light waves change from waves to particles when they're observed by human beings.
Wow.
So the nature of things changes when we look at them, when we observe them intentionally. And so what we would say is your life is worthy of your attention, and connecting with someone else and having that skilled relationship that's all about you is you're worth it, and employees are worth it. And when you start investing in them in these ways, you get a more resilient, more wholehearted, more present person, and that person's going to be more effective in everything they're doing. They're going to be more balanced, they're going to be more resilient, and they're going to be more productive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve and I work together. So, I mean, I think we can attest to that. I will definitely be
I'll be
showing up
monitoring your
differently.
productivity very closely.
Please monitor. Yeah. No, but think about that. I mean, a breakup is hard, and it's on your mind, right? For not just a day, for like weeks, maybe months, right? Even if you're the person doing it, right? So that impacts my work. And I think that having gotten it kind of off my chest, I was like, wow, that was really, really helpful in my work. So, yeah,
I,
get it for your
I,
employees
I,
too. That's,
I totally agree, Trish. There's so many
yeah.
really valuable things I think that were uncovered here in just through our experiences going through a
Mhm.
shoulder session as well, and what we've learned from Rhett and from Austin today. Like I said, I'd encourage folks check it out. It's not a huge kind of, oh my God, I've got to have this. I've got to go to my general practitioner and get a referral, and then I've got to go look through all these listings for therapists and try to find one and go through that intake. That's a lot. That's a lot of climbing to do to get into something. And look, I've done that stuff, and Trish, you have too. And like, it's important to do that. But I think this is a little bit different. And I also think, the accessibility, the structure, the concepts behind it, right, to help you sort of learn about yourself and discover what's sort of within you. I would encourage everybody, if you think you could benefit from it, uh, uh, give it a try. Use our code HR Happy Hour as well if you do, as Austin said, and they'll give back to the community some more. So,
Well,
guys,
and just to
yeah,
add really quickly, it's cost effective. And so right now
yeah,
is the time that I would say a large majority of organizations are planning their benefits for next year, right? Open enrollment usually happens in the fall. So you still have time to have that conversation with Shoulder and get in there and see, is this something we want to try for 2025 as just an added benefit to help your people.
Yeah.
And I think it's well worth it because a lot of times we can't do things that we want to do. They're so expensive. This is one that I think, as a former benefits administrator, I would absolutely be looking into if I was still in that role.
Yeah. Great stuff. Guys, I know we gave out the website. It's sholder.com, not without the U, right? SHOLDER.com. We'll put that in the notes as well. Man, this has been fun. We both, Trish and I both said we really enjoyed our experience as sharers, right, in our sessions. The folks that we were paired up with, mine was fantastic. I think, Trish, you felt really great about the person you worked with as well. Rett, I'll give it to you for the last word. Any kind of parting thoughts or anything else that our folks listening might want to know about this, other than just hey, be open to it and give it a try.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all real quick and hand it to Rett in a minute, just for y'all's messaging and for trying out the service. And so it's experiential. Once you try to see it, you see why it's different, right? But it's a very effective service, no doubt. But it's also just happens to be radically affordable. So that's the feedback that we've gotten, from HR professionals that have looked at it, looked at the cost, and looked at the implementation and how easy it is to work with us. So Rett and team we've done a remarkable job, and so a lot of great conversations going on right now. And yes, there is still time if they want to do something. So Rett, go ahead.
Yeah. Likewise, I feel the same. Steve and Trish, I really appreciate the opportunity to share here with you and your audience, and appreciate you both taking the time yourselves to get shouldered and to experience how different it is from counseling. One of the things we say is this isn't counseling because we don't give any counsel. There's no advice giving. Every bit of advice is going to come from inside of you based on the questions that we're asking and the somatic exercises we're supporting you in. And so, I guess the final thing I'd just say is I'd reiterate your life. Anyone that's listening, your life is worth your full attention. And many times it helps if someone else is there with you, paying attention to your life as well as it's emerging. That it's hard to do. It's hard to go through life by ourselves. And especially when it comes to our inner world and making sense of it and processing emotions and evolving our perspectives, that it really does help to have that skilled relationship, and that we want to provide that at the most affordable rate in the market. The highest skill at the most affordable rate. So that's what we're doing.
Love it.
Yep. Great stuff. So Rett, Kearbey, Austin Baker, Sholder, my highest recommendation for sure. I don't say that lightly. And I would have been like the Guy Fieri when he does his cooking show, right, Trish? Like if he has like the bacon cheeseburger and he loves it, he talks, oh my God, this is the best bacon cheeseburger, right? and if he doesn't love it, he lists the ingredients out loud. If you ever watch him, he says, "Oh, I taste the bacon. I taste the whatever." Right? So,
oh no.
Yeah, that's if you ever watch that show.
That's his tell.
Yeah, that's the tell.
Wow.
Oh, paprika in there, right? No, I had a great experience, and in fact, the last thing I'll say about it, my shoulder met with me on Sunday morning. So like,
Wow.
What kind of therapist are you going to get to talk to you on Sunday morning? None. That's who. None. Right. And that's when I had my meeting, because that was the best time for me this week. So thanks again. We'll put the links in the show notes as well. Trish, super stuff. Thank you for sharing so openly as well about your experience too. So I do appreciate
and you
that.
too.
Yeah.
You too.
Great
It was
stuff.
very meaningful.
Thanks to the guys for joining us. Thanks to our friends at Paychecks, of course. And my name is Steve Bose. For our guests, for Trish Steed, thanks for listening to the show. We will see you next time. And bye for now.